The document that we passed in Senate Budget Committee yesterday contains a spending totaling about $204 billion, including $140 billion from the general fund and total reserves of about $17.6 billion. From our perspective, the Senate's perspective, this budget is both responsible, honest, and makes progress. When we say responsible, we are glad to continue to support the vision of our governor in making sure that our rainy day fund is robust, that we are investing in our future by making sure that we've got adequate reserves. The Senate version actually creates a new reserve account, something we're calling the safety net reserve, because we don't, as policymakers, we never want to be in the position again, whereas we kind of experience the highs and lows of our budget, where when social safety net programs are in greatest demand and greatest need, those are often the times when we're in fiscal crisis and we cut those programs back. So we've created a safety net reserve to protect the integrity of those programs when Californians will need them the most. We're going to end the practice of really ignoring what we have done in terms of budget forecasts in the past. We're going to deny the mathematical reality of inflation by actually making sure that we are investing smart, that we're not going to act as if we have flat funding for critical programs when we know really, in effect, we're, by not increasing funding in many of these programs, they are indeed hidden costs, up to sometimes 30% for key programs. And so when we talk about honest budgeting, we're going to be honest with CSU and UC and the courts. And if we say that we want you to expand enrollment, we've got to pay for it. They can't do it with flat funding. We're going to be honest with regard to SSI, SSP recipients, and CalWORKs recipients. And when we have flat funding, we know that in effect, that's a cut when we have it invested in those programs to keep up with inflation. And so looking at COLAs and making sure that those programs are paying California's most vulnerable residents payments that are closer to a livable wage in the state of California. We talk about making progress. It's about investing in programs that have tragically been neglected and underfunded for far too many years. And so when we look at funding, increasing funding to the local control funding formula, we look at increasing funding to the CSU UCs. Again, being honest about if we have expectations about enrollment growth, we have to pay for it. Again, expanding access to important child care services so Californians can go to work. Madam Pro Tem talked about fighting homelessness and poverty. I'm proud to have been a part of a Senate that voted to provide $5 billion over 4 years, an investment in homelessness and affordable housing programs, including $1 billion from the recently enacted SB 2 funds and $4 billion from the general fund, again over a 4-year period. The governor's earned income tax credit has been a successful poverty alleviation program the last 2 years, and we're expanding the population of who will be eligible to benefit from the EITC. With regard to Prop 56 and the UC RAP, a number of my colleagues, a number of my budget subcommittee chairs are really concerned about how we pay for, when you're in medical school, Residency. Thank you, Madam Pro Tem. And being honest about what voters thought they were voting for Prop 56 and making sure we have adequate residency programs in state. Because as we look at communities across the state that don't have adequate primary care physicians, we know if California medical students leave California for their residency, it's not likely that they'll return to the communities they grew up in and provide those critical health care services. We've approved the governor's mental health proposal to provide $312 million for counties and the No Place Like Home bond to make sure that it's available sooner rather than later. Again, with regard to the infrastructure, we've had a number of natural disasters that have compromised Californians in terms of the loss of home and affordability and further compromising our housing stock. And so we're going to make critical forest fire protection and mitigation investments, including approximately $483 million for fire prevention efforts and approximately $551 million for mitigation efforts. So as we talk about the infrastructure, those are important investments we've also made in the Senate version of the budget. We approved the governor's proposed $2 billion infrastructure plan, which provides funding again for the courts, UC, CSU. We appropriate $5 billion in SB1 transportation funds to improve our streets and highways. And again, with regard to the judiciary, we're providing a $50 million set aside for the judicial system in the event the Humphrey decision is finalized. So that's a very high-level kind of summary of some of the important investments we've made, in addition to record-level rainy day fund investments and the efforts we took to spend down on debt. I think I've looked at this budget really as a three-legged stool. Rainy day fund savings, our new savings account to mitigate future cuts to critical social service programs, our effort to spend down on future debt, and again, investments in programs that have been long neglected that Californians rely on to educate their children, to feed their families, and to house their families.